everybody. My name is Pete Reynoso. I'm a shop shooter at Robinson Archery here in Tucson, Arizona, and I'm here today to talk about the new UV1K arrows. I've been able to spend some time with them lately thanks to my friends at Robinson Archery for hooking it up, and I just wanted to give you some of my initial thoughts and impressions. All right, so first off, I was a little bit surprised when Ultraview announced that they were coming out with an arrow of their own. I thought that they were jumping into a market that was already full of a lot of really good competitors in your gold tips and your Eastons and your victories. So I was a little bit skeptical, to be honest, that they were going to be able to produce an arrow that lived up to their standards. You know, Ultraview is kind of known for innovating in spaces where it's become increasingly difficult to innovate in the archery community. But after learning that they had partnered up with Victory on this arrow, it made a lot more sense. So to me, one of the most impressive aspects about this arrow is that 1K weave. It is a stronger way to do carbon. And with that, Ultraview, I think, has been able to accomplish a few things. For one, obviously, with a stronger weave, you don't need as thick of a wall on the arrow to achieve a certain spine. So I'm shooting 300 spine arrows, which come in at 8.7 grains per inch. And when you look at some of the other arrows that are out there, some of the top shelf arrows, that is going to come in just a little bit lighter than most of what you have out there. But more importantly, what that thinner wall thickness means is potentially a faster recovery time. Now, in general, as you step down in diameter and get closer and closer to 4 millimeters or 0.166, you're talking about getting a thicker and thicker wall on that arrow in order to achieve whatever spine you're going for. Now, why does a thicker wall mean a slower recovery time? Well, if you've ever seen a video of an arrow flying in slow motion after leaving a bow, you'll notice that it flexes up and down at first. Something that I learned from Dorj at Fire Knock on the Deer Gear podcast. An arrow with thicker walls is going to have more flex retaining memory, and therefore it's going to be flexing up and down longer, further downrange than is an arrow that has a less flex retaining memory, an arrow with thinner walls. And so theoretically, what you might gain out of this Ultraview arrow is just that much more precision downrange, especially at shorter distances where it might make the most difference. Now, I admit it's not going to make all the difference in the world. Nothing will replace practicing with your bow. But for all of you perfectionists out there that just have to have everything just right, this is going to be an arrow where you can get that right out of the box. There's also some other things that factor into that, like, do you have the right spine? But for the sake of comparison, let's just assume that we have a properly spined arrow. Now, eventually, any arrow that's spined properly should recover if you give it enough time and distance. Now, I've taken some measurements with some decent calipers. They're not the best calipers. Ultraview hasn't published what their outer diameter of their arrow is yet, but just based on these measurements, it looks like the UV1K arrow at 4.5 millimeters has thinner walls than both the gold tip pierced platinum 4 mil arrow and an Easton 5 mil match grade arrow. I wasn't that surprised that it had thinner walls than the 4 millimeter gold tip pierced platinum, but I was a little bit when I learned that this arrow had a slightly thinner wall than even a 5 millimeter arrow in that Easton Axis match grade. All right, and here's just some more data to look at in comparing the UV1K arrows to some of its top competitors. So you have the UV1K with an inner diameter of 4.5 millimeters, a straightness tolerance of 0.001, a GPI or grains per inch of 8.7, and a weight range of 0.5 grains. The gold tip pierced platinum, inner diameter of 4 millimeters, a straightness tolerance of 0.0025, GPI of 9.1, just a little bit heavier than the UV1K, and a guaranteed weight range of 0.5. And I wanted to go ahead and say that that straightness tolerance of 0.0025 is still pretty good. It is the worst in class compared to the other arrows on this list. Gold tip does have another micro diameter arrow, at least another one in the Pierce Tour, and maybe that arrow should have been used in this list. But I went ahead and used the Pierce Platinum because I believe that that's the arrow that's being used in some of these other custom arrow 6-packs, like the ones from the FL Outdoors website. So I included them in this list instead. The Ultra Premiers are pretty comparable, aside from the weight and the guaranteed weight range, which is 1 grain as opposed to 0.5 in the UV1K. And for the Easton Axis, long range 4mm arrow and match grade 5mm arrow, the straightness is the same compared to the UV1K, and they are a bit heavier. And as far as the weight range is concerned, I wasn't able to find that information online. All right, so let's talk about knock fit. Knock fit's super important, and there's a lot of YouTube videos out there that can explain what proper knock fit looks like and what it sounds like better than I can, so I won't attempt to do that. But I will just say that make sure that you have proper knock fit with these arrows. It's important with any arrow that you shoot. It was easy for me because I was already shooting the AE IP knock, so I didn't have to change anything. But if you're getting knock pinch, or if things aren't quite working well, go to your local archery shop and have them reset your knock points, tie a new D-loop if need be, but just make sure that you get that right. You may even have to redo your center serving depending on your strings that you're shooting. I'm shooting center punch archery strings. Some specs on the strings that I'm shooting, which I love, by the way. If you need some new strings, check out Center Punch Archery. The company behind the shirt that I'm wearing. But I really enjoy them. They're natural colored strings made from BCY X99, and the serving material that was used is 17 thou Halo. All right, so it just so happened that I had a box of AE IP Knox. They're the black in the 0.166 variety. They're the IP4 knock. And so I got IP Knox, and then I have one of the knocks that I just took out of one of my Ultraview arrows. So just going to compare a few things here. This is just one of the knocks coming in at about 7.2 grains. Be careful not to mix them up, but it's hard to tell. Not sure if they're different, but I'll just go ahead and weigh this one. This one's coming in at 7.4. Check out another IP knock, 7.2, 7.2. So that's the same as the Ultraview arrow. I might as well grab another knock off one of these Ultraview arrows. 7.0. 7.2. What the heck? Let's do one more arrow. 7.2. So that's the same. And we're looking at, I'm trying not to squeeze it or apply too much pressure, but we're looking at 0.1595 inches on the Ultraview knock. And 0.1595 on my pack of AAE knocks. Those are pretty dang consistent. These are the same knock. It's not going to be the end of the world if you don't order your knocks from the Ultraview website. But with that said, if you're going down the road of replacing a knock here or there, and you have OCD about the consistency between all of your arrow components and your arrows, go ahead and just go pick up another pack of IP knots and replace them all. All right, so another thing that I wanted to talk about is that these arrow points have a PVD coating. Some people have been critical about the price of these points too, and I get it. It is at $19 for a 6-pack. It is a little bit more than what we're seeing manufacturers charge for arrow points. And I was wondering why that was. I looked at the description of the field points and saw that they have a PVD coating, and I had to do a little bit of research on that to understand what it is myself. What PVD stands for is a physical vapor deposition, and just a quick Google definition is that it's a process in which a solid material is vaporized in a vacuum and deposited onto the surface of a part. And if you look more into this, you could increase the durability of something like your field point by having this PVD coating. It kind of depends on what the coating material is and how it was applied exactly. But I think that that's what the intent was behind Ultraview having this PVD coating on the arrow points. It's not the first time that Ultraview's come out with the product with the PVD coating. If you look at their quick weights for their stabilizer system, you'll see that they have a PVD coating on them as well. And as they put it, these weights have a flawless black finish thanks to the PVD coating. And these components are made from premium grade stainless steel and coated with an ultra durable PVD process. So I'm not sure if that means that the PVD coating that they've used, the material that they've coated the points with, is going to add to the durability such that the arrows aren't um, as easily damaged, that they're stronger. Sometimes, we shoot into targets at the archery range. People's arrows have broken off into the targets, or God forbid they shoot crossbow bolts into the targets, and their arrows get broken off in there, and you smack a field point and break your arrow, or screw up your tip. Or if the PVD coating is to just prevent, the likelihood of these points rusting. Regardless, it is good to see, since I picked up these arrows to now, Ultraview has added the field points to their website. The nocks have not still been added, and they've also added rewrap kits. And I think that they worked on that in a collaboration with Adams Precision Archery, and they do some really cool stuff. Check out their page. But yeah, so they're starting to have these backup parts available. So for Ultraview's first attempt at designing vane, I think these came out pretty good. The material is a little bit spongy almost, but they seem pretty durable. I've shot them a bit and I haven't had any issues so far. And like I said, I even kind of smashed one and it came back, it regained its shape. I love the concept of having these die cut wraps where one section of the wrap is a little bit longer than the rest. That's going to tell you where that spine is. As you can see, that's right in line with the mark that Victory and Ultraview have added to their arrows. But no, cool vane. Like the idea of the thinner section of the vane to reduce weight. That's pretty neat. I do think that some people are going to have issues when they need to replace this vane because they went with a 2-degree offset helical. I know that I can probably get pretty close to accomplishing the same thing with my VaneMaster Pro, but it is a little bit tricky. So when you go with the helical, oftentimes you're going to get good contact here and here. But it is a little bit more challenging because of what you're trying to do to get good contact with the glue and the vane and the arrow in the middle. So, you can do that with enough glue, but it's kind of hard to find that balance between having enough glue and doing a sloppy job. So, just my 2 cents. When I go to replace the vanes, I might go with straight vanes or maybe 1-degree offset. In my opinion, at higher speeds, you're not going to see much of a difference between having this helical and offset versus straight, especially downrange. And so in my mind, having that extra helical on the back end of the arrow, it's great for accuracy, especially close range. But I wonder if the trade-offs of that parachute resulting in energy losses downrange might be more valuable to consider. Looking at some specs on the dozen arrows that I purchased, just wanted to show you some of the variation that I saw between arrows and components. So for arrow shafts, we came in pretty consistently at around 310 grains the average being 310.22, and the standard deviation being 0.41. And that's a pretty low standard deviation. There's not very much variation at all. And the same can be said for the field points. So the points, again, most of them were 100 to 100.2, only 0.2 grains in variation, and a standard deviation super low of 0.1. The insert outsert, maybe a little bit more variation compared to the other measurements that I've listed so far, but not really. Actually, the standard deviation was 0.2, and the average was right around 75 grains. So that looked really good as well. And your point weight plus insert outsert, you're going to have a standard deviation of 0.32 out of the box. This is making sure that I keep the field points matched up to the outserts that they came with. And we're looking at 175.03 average and 0.32 standard deviation. So I'm logged into floutdoors.com, and I just wanted to show that I don't think Ultraview is alone in this camp of producing an expensive quality arrow bundle or package like they are, and teaming up with other manufacturers of different archery products. Here we have a LRP long range precision ultra arrow in a 4mm variety. It is a 6-pack. Comes with tack vanes and maybe Schwacker broadheads. I'm not positive. But that goes for $285. Same thing down here. Tacks teamed up with Gold Tip and Schwacker to produce another 4mm long range precision arrow 6-pack for $285. And so, like I said, Ultraview is definitely not alone, and I just think that this is the direction that the industry is headed. Some people are going to like that. Some people are going to hate that. I do think that you'll still maintain your options. I don't think there's going to be a shortage of budget-friendly arrows out there. So if you buy these arrow shafts uncut, I cannot stress the importance enough of making sure that when you cut the arrows, you have the means to square them properly. Last night I cut my arrows and I put them on the spine tester. I'm just looking at how much variation I have in thousandths of an inch when I spin the arrow, and there's quite a bit, and that's most likely due to me not taking the time to square the arrows properly. So here's an example of an arrow that was cut and squared properly. And I can tell because as I'm rotating this arrow shaft on the ram spine tester, I'm seeing really less than half of a thousandths variation. All right, to show you what I mean, I have this arrow, one of the problem arrows on the tester, and I'm getting 11 thousandths variation, almost 11 thousandths. If you look here at the arrow point, you can almost see it move up and down as I rotate the arrow. It's very subtle, but noticeable if you pay attention. That's not acceptable, so I'm going to take this point off again and use the AE vane glue. I use mechanical broadheads most of the time anyways, so this shouldn't be an issue. Okay, so a little bit frustrating. I took the points off of a few of my arrows because when I was testing them, they weren't coming in as straight as I'd like, as far as how straight the points and insert outsert components are installed on the arrow. I was pretty sure, still not positive if this isn't the case, but I was pretty sure that it was the arrows not being square, the shafts not being square. So I took them to the squaring jig again, tried that. Now I'm not so sure. It could be that I'm using this hot melt glue not doing a great job at applying it and making sure that I'm spinning the shaft whenever I put it onto the arrow, or onto the components rather. I am storing the arrows in a vertical position to attempt to avoid glue, you know, ending up on one side of the shaft or the other as it cools. So I think what I'm going to do at this point is take the points back off of the arrows that I'm having issues with, try to get as much of the glue out of there as possible. And this time for these two problem arrows that I'm having, I'm going to use the AE vein glue. Not really sure what else to do at this point, but this is one little frustrating point that I ran into. All right, so here's an after shot after I was able to remove all of the points from the arrows that weren't, giving us a good result with this test. And I cleaned up the glue that was in them. And this one's my worst arrow. It's spinning, I'm getting about 3 thousandths, maybe a little over 3 thousandths in variation. But it's not much. A lot better. Okay, so the scientist part of me is having trouble letting go of the potential errors that could have been present in some of the claims that I'm making, and some of the measurements that I've taken. And so I just wanted to address a couple of those. For one, my equipment is by no means the best. I doubt that it's anything compared to what Ultraview has. I don't have the best calipers. I don't have the most expensive scale out there. But from what I've saw, at least my measurements have been pretty consistent. So that gives me at least some faith in the numbers that I've collected. So still more to come. I know Ultraview is going to be releasing some more data, and hopefully they align with what I've said here. But that is one potential error. So take some of that with a grain of salt. Also, another error that I have here is that I noticed that when I was taking the points off on those two problem arrows that I couldn't really get a good reading on, they weren't very straight. I noticed that I used my D-loop pliers, which I shouldn't have been using D-loop pliers in the first place, but regardless, I used those D-loop pliers on the outsert portion of the collar. And it's possible that I could have applied a little bit too much pressure. I don't think that I was being rough, but I could have applied too much pressure and slightly bent that aluminum collar, which maybe could have led to those bad readings that I was getting, where I was showing, 9 to 11 thousandths in variation. Another potential error is that I don't know that I know the best way to verify that the arrows have been cut and squared properly. I have the squaring jig, I took it to that, the arrows looked square to me, but other than eyeballing it, I don't really know of a really good way to check. But if any of you know a better way, please drop that in the comments. Okay, so another potential error is that there is not very much of the insert that sticks out and is exposed for you to put your hot melt glue on. I did the best that I could. I kind of used a little bit more glue, kind of to be a mortar, I guess, to fill that space between the arrow shaft and the collar. I mean, I put enough glue to go into the arrow, obviously, but it was impossible to avoid glue seeping out and filling that space between the arrow and the collar. So I think that was kind of intentional by design. I'm not positive. But that's, I guess, something that I'd like to know. Is more glue better in this case? I think that it probably was. But with that said, that could have also lent itself to the issue that I was seeing where the arrow and the point weren't exactly straight. Maybe I needed more glue, or there was just too much play in making sure that that arrow and point was lined up. So again, if you're buying these arrows at your local archery shop, just make sure that if they're cutting the arrows and assembling them for you, that you have a discussion on making sure that they're cut well, that they're cut square, and that the person who's installing the components is taking the time and care to do it right. So in summary, do I think these arrows are worth it? Honestly, I really do. I've enjoyed shooting them. I gotta say that I don't know if it's me wanting to believe that they're making a big difference, or if I'm just, you know, on a good streak for shooting well. But regardless, I'm shooting well with them, so I'm going to continue to use them. Do I think they're worth the price? I really do. I think that these arrows give access to those who may not have access to a good, high quality, precision, custom built arrow, if they want to fork out the money, of course. But I kind of think about it like this. Let's say it's finally your turn to hunt elk. You finally got drawn after 8 or 9 years of putting in or more, and you've done all your homework. You shoot your bow several times a week, and you've just done everything that you can do to make sure that you're well prepared for this hunt. Would I pay some extra money to just scratch one more variable off my list and knowing that I have a good arrow? Sure, I would. Definitely. Um, can I kill an elk with another arrow? Yeah, of course you can. It's like a cereal analogy that my friend Freddie brought up the other day when we were talking about this. He said, Pete, can I get by on eating multi-meal colossal crunch berries for breakfast? Will I survive? Yeah, absolutely you will. But are you an adult with adult money? Absolutely. And, that Captain Crunch, we all know it's just a little bit better. Even if we can't put our finger on it, you can taste the difference. Now, can you make a better breakfast? Can you make some Belgian waffles that are going to be even better than Captain Crunch berries? Absolutely, you can. It's going to take know-how. It's going to take some time. And maybe even take a little bit of investing in tools that you don't have to do it. But you can arrive at the same place. But will I be running this arrow going forward? I will, until I am convinced that it's not the best option for me going forward. But for now, I'm really digging this. But if you have any questions, feel free to add me on Instagram, send me a message. I'm on Facebook, or get a hold of the guys at Robinson's Archery. They really know these products that they're selling through and through, and would be glad to work with you. So thanks, everybody. I hope you have a good rest of your day. Thanks for bearing with me as I make my first YouTube video. So thank you for watching. Go check out my friends at Robinson Archery and Center Punch Archery for strings, and have a good one.